And welcome to another edition of Press Pass on Oregon Duck Football News. I am joined with Gary Horowitz from the Statesman Journal, beat writer for the Oregon Ducks in the Statesman Journal. Gary, Ducks remain undefeated, 7-0, 4-0 in conference, coming off the good win on Saturday against Washington State. Good place to begin is I think a lot of people were shocked about the BCS rankings at Oregon coming out at number 3.
Yeah, because Florida State beat Clemson so convincingly, I wasn't totally surprised that they would move up because they were number 1 in the country, I think, in the computer facet of the BCS equation. Oregon's ahead of them in the polls. But from everything I'm hearing and reading and watching that ESPN show and Kirk Herbstreit talking about it and Brad Edwards, that Oregon's schedule moving forward is a lot stronger than Florida State's. They have Stanford in there, they have UCLA, even the Oregon State Beavers are number 25 in the BCS. So if they win the Pac-12 championship game, I think they are virtually a lock to get one of the 2 spots for the national championship game.
I kind of monitor social media yesterday when that came out, and was a lot of Duck fans and people who follow Oregon were just outraged about where they are. And I think the message here is, like you just referenced, is that Oregon still has 3 teams in the top 25 on their remaining schedule, while Florida State only has 1, and that's in Miami. So that plays into the Ducks' favor. It
definitely helps them. And talking to the players, they are not interested in where they are in the BCS. I really believe that they totally are down with this win the day, control what you can control. And nobody I talked to even watched the show. They didn't know where they were ranked. And I think that's the right attitude to have, because they have absolutely no control over any of these rankings. And if they win all their games, they get to the Pac-12 championship game, win that, they're 13-0. That's all they can do.
I think silently, probably a good portion of the players sat home and watched it, because they're going to want to know where they are, obviously. Moving on, one of the other big controversies this week was what defensive coordinator Nick Aliotti said about Mike Leach and throwing for those last 2 touchdowns late in the game on Saturday. What were your feelings about that?
Well, Nick, he talks from the cuff. He just speaks his heart. I understood where he was coming from that, because the final score looked like it was a little closer than it should have been, and most teams probably wouldn't have done that. I think it's something that he probably, in retrospect, and I think he's acknowledged that through an apology, that it's not something you want to say. It just didn't help the cause. It didn't help the program. So I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just sort of Nick being authentic.
We asked Coach Helfrich about that, and Coach Helfrich said we've moved on. He obviously didn't want to talk about that anymore. The statement speaks for itself, and we certainly understand that. UCLA coming into town, they lost a tough game at Stanford this last Saturday, but nonetheless, game day is going to be here showing how big this game is. What do you expect out of the Bruins in this matchup?
I didn't realize game day was going to be here, but not a surprise at all. They've been here a lot, and whenever they're here,
First time this year.
Yeah, Oregon always plays well on game day. Coming off the loss to Stanford, I actually thought UCLA was going to win that game. I was so impressed by what they did at Nebraska. But still, UCLA having an excellent year. Hundley's a fun quarterback to watch. He's a dual threat. Oregon hasn't played a quarterback with his capabilities. Their defense has been strong all year. This will be the best test Oregon has had all year. Then they have Stanford the following week. So the schedule's really getting a lot better. We're going to see how good the Ducks are here in a hurry, and I have a feeling they're pretty good.
I have a feeling that the difficulty that they face, the secondary primarily, against the Leach air raid offense, and they faced 89 pass attempts, will help them, not in just this game, but down the road. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to play a team that's sort of going to, I think they used the words nickel and dime them down the field. They didn't really get any big plays. But 89 passes, I mean, that is just outrageous. And part of it is because Oregon scores so quickly, they're not on the field, and Washington State was able to get on the field. But I think it will help them. I think the defense, and speaking to Tony Washington, he was a little upset that they gave up that many yards and that many points. I think, if anything, the Ducks will come out Saturday against UCLA with a little something to prove. They have a chip on their shoulders, which you want to see every week.
Yeah, that's where I was actually leading with that. I know that you spoke with Tony Washington today, defensive end for the Ducks. What were his thoughts overall about the way that they played against Washington State?
Well, he was unhappy also, maybe a little bit like Nick Aliotti. Not that Washington State scored, but he feels whoever's on the field, they shouldn't score. We shouldn't give up yards. That was sort of the take that I got from it. So, and he was not happy with the defensive performance. They did give up 500-something yards, which is a little bit alarming. I mean, they were never in jeopardy of losing the game in that second half. But I think it's just like we said today. I think it just helps them moving forward. And Tony always talks about if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, and he feels like they're getting better.
Well, the Ducks certainly have an advantage with the current BCS. All computerized now. Oregon remains number 2 in both polls, the AP and the USA Today. So there are a lot of voters who believe that they are the second best team in the country. And of course, if they keep winning, they should find themselves in the national championship.
I mean, imagine today if you're Ohio State, having won 19 games in a row. And the only way they can get to the national championship game is if at least 2 teams ahead of them, Alabama, Oregon, or Florida State, lose. It's too bad that there's not a 4-team playoff this year.
Yeah.
I personally like 8.
Yeah.
But at least it's getting a little bit closer. And this year, with the final year of the BCS, with 2 teams, Oregon is positioned really well right now.
Well, the Bruins come to town on Saturday against the Ducks, 4 p.m. in Autzen Stadium. You can follow Gary on the Statesman Journal on Twitter at G Horowitz. And of course, you can follow Oregon Duck Football News at Duck FB News. For Gary Horowitz, I'm Warren Williamson, and this has been Press Pass on Oregon Duck Football News.